cakes.
If you're looking for me, you better check under the sea, 'cause that is where you'll find me, underneath the sea.
Welcome to Water Damage with your host, Gil Mancha. This is my chronological discussion of the King of the Seven Seas, Aquaman. Disclaimer, I will be actively getting and collecting issues as we go, and I'm trying to only cover issues that I have a physical copy of or are in a collected edition. I'm going to try to stray away from digital because I love physical media, but the DC Universe Infinite app would be a great way to keep up with the podcast. Be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify or preferred platform to get episodes as soon as they drop. If you play Injustice 2 on Xbox, you can join the official guild Water Damage Podcast, ID 0JMD4. Their community can play games of Injustice 2, which is currently free on Game Pass. Regardless of who you play, you're welcome to come in and play, or just chat. Follow the Twitter or X account at WaterDamagePod to see when I go live. We can chat and play some games. In today's episode, we'll be covering Adventure Comics 268, The Adventures of Aquaboy. Links will be in the podcast notes. This issue was released in January 1960. Let's take a look back at what else was happening that month in history.
Do it again!
Using January 15th as our date, the top of the music charts in the US was El Paso by Marty Robbins, and in the UK was What Do You Want by Adam Faith. The top of the box office was Operation Petticoat. Popular TV shows include What's My Line, The Danny Thomas Show, 77 Sunset Strip, and Bonanza. Children and teens are watching shows like The Gumby Show, Heckle and Jekyll, Colonel Bleep, and The Rough and Ready Show. Popular toys include Woolly Willy, Crater Critters, Play Pal Dolls, and Matchbox Cars. El Paso by Marty Robbins is a nice old sounding but pleasant song. It's a country song, which I'm now realizing that a lot of the songs that my parents would listen to in Spanish were in fact probably country. It's widely considered a genre classic for its gripping narrative which ends in the death of its protagonist. Its shift from past to present tense, haunting harmonies by vocalists Bobby Sykes and Jim Glaser of the Glaser Brothers, and the eloquent and varied Spanish guitar accompaniment by Grady Martin that lends to the recording of a distinct Tex-Mex feel. Oh, maybe that's why it resonated so much with me. I definitely recommend listening to it while reading the lyrics to get a sense of the narrative. Notably, the Grateful Dead performed this song 389 times after entering their repertoire in 1969. In 1966, Robbins wrote a sister song to this called Felina from El Paso, telling the life story of Felina, the Mexican girl from El Paso, referencing the song in a third-person narrative. It's over 8 minutes long. You could probably expand this to make like a short movie combining the two song stories. Moving to the other song, What Do You Want by Adam Faith, it's not telling a narrative, but it's conveying the complexity of love as the protagonist grapples with the questions and doubts that arise when faced with a faltering connection. The somber tone and heartfelt delivery offer a poignant portrayal of the human desire for clarity and understanding in romantic situations. Some of the lyrics, in no order, are, what do you want if you don't want money? What do you want if you don't want gold? Say what you want and I'll give it to you, darling. Wish you wanted my love, baby. Well, I'm offering you this heart of mine, but all you do is play it cool. I think most of us have been in a situation where you're not sure where we are in a relationship, or things aren't how they once were, leaving you kind of wondering. It's raw and emotive, and I definitely recommend it. If you're interested in listening to either of the weekly songs, or go back to a past song, be sure to check out the official Water Damage playlist on Spotify. Each episode will update it for your listening pleasure. I haven't seen Operation Petticoat, but the summary is, during World War II, a commander finds himself stuck with a decrepit and pink submarine, a con man executive officer, and a group of army nurses. If you're interested, it's free on Pluto TV, available to rent and buy on Apple TV, Vudu, and Prime Video. The Danny Thomas Show is a 1953 sitcom about Danny Williams, a successful nightclub singer who encounters a variety of difficult and amusing situations when he tries to balance his career and family life. It's free on YouTube, Pluto TV, Tubi, Sling TV, Roku Channel, Crackle, Prime Video, Plex, Fubo TV, and Philo. Apparently, it's 1 cent on Redbox. 77 Sunset Strip is a 1958 drama that took a look at how private detectives work in LA, based out of an office called 77 Sunset Strip. Detectives Stu Bailey and Jeff Spencer worked together as PIs for most of the show's run, but by the final season, Bailey worked alone. I couldn't find this show on any streaming sites. Bonanza is a 14th season Western series. Ben Cartwright is the patriarch of an all-male Nevada ranching family. Set during and after the Civil War, Bonanza is the story of the life on the family's 1,000-acre spread, known as the Ponderosa, near Virginia City. It's free on Tubi, Sling TV, Roku Channel, Plex, and Prime Video. The Gumby Show is a cartoon featuring the titular character Gumby, who is a blocky green humanoid made of clay. All of the characters are clay, and you can watch the complete 50 series on Prime Video. I watched the first episode, and he steals a spaceship to go to the moon. When he gets there, there's a sign where it says to put these weights on so you don't float away. But in nearly every other scene, he's just not wearing it. As they were posing the model, they just forgot to put that back on. But at times they remember, like, oh yeah, he's supposed to be wearing this. Really weird. Sometimes it'll just be the same exact scene, but like from a different camera angle, so he just won't be wearing it. I won't make this the Gumby cast, but it is interesting to see how primitive everything is in terms of production. The Colonel Bleep Show is about an interplanetary intelligence agent from the planet Futura who is sent to investigate Earth after an atomic explosion and travels with companions Squeak, a puppet with a mind of its own, and Scratch, a dim-witted caveman. There are 45 surviving episodes of the 100 made on YouTube. The rest are presumably considered lost media. If you're familiar with the songs, top movie, or other events, let me know on the Spotify app at least. You have a Q&A section where you can reply to my question of the week of, what do you think of this issue? You can do it there, social media, or even the YouTube VOD of this episode. While you're there, I have a poll too. What other DC hero would you like to see covered like Aquaman? The choices are Dick Grayson's Nightwing and Robin, Sergeant Rock, Blue Beetle, all 3 so far, Booster Gold, and Shazam. You can pick as many as you want, and I'd love to see what you think. That's a taste of what the world was like when Adventure Comics 268 was released. I'm reading this thanks to Showcase Presents Aquaman Volume 1, but it was also reprinted in Aquaman Archives number 1 and Aquaman number 47. Just like the other issues we've covered here, Adventure Comics is an anthology of stories, and this is the last one behind Superboy. Per usual, it's either the middle or the last. Nothing's beating out the Golden Boy. Again, the story is called The Adventures of Aquaboy. Unfortunately, both Aquaman and Aquaboy's gloves are yellow in this issue, which I don't like. Yes, they pop on the page, but it looks like they're about to wash some dishes, not save the day. That said, the Showcase Presents series is in black and white, so if that's your only access to it, you wouldn't know. The story was written by Robert Bernstein, penciled and inked by Ramona Fradden. This cover Adventure Comics focuses on the Superboy story, so we'll focus on the first panel of the Aquaman story. The Aquaman name is written in green, which we haven't seen lately. In the panel, we see Aquaboy and 2 sailors on a boat. Aquaboy has his head over the side of the boat and a shark with its teeth around his head. He's doing this to prove that he has control over sea creatures, but the sailors think it's just a cheap trick. Hey, maybe that shark ain't even real. No sir, son, I don't believe in a human ruler of the sea, let alone a boy ruler. The text explains that how we all know about the amazing things that Aquaman can do, but there was a time where very few knew or believed he even existed. Aquaman's past that time in his life, but he's sent back to those times when one day he relives the adventures of Aquaboy. Since this comic isn't on the DC Universe Infinite app, I can't read you guys the About This Book section. After the break, we'll summarize the issue.
Is Aquaman finished? Can you make it to the bathroom before we return with part 2 of the show?
What it do, guys? Manjoume here, and if you like board games, especially deck building games, you should check out @Team_Thunder on YouTube. There we have unboxings and games of Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, the DC deck building game, Transformers deck building game, and many more. That's also where you can find VODs for this and Accelerated Visions, a Spider-Man 2099 podcast where you can directly leave a comment and we can discuss the issues.
The Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure, featuring Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, and your favorite comic book superheroes in their own adventure stories. It's 60 minutes of thrills and fun, next on most of these stations.
We start our story with Aquaman patrolling a stormy area in the South Pacific. Obviously, he was riding Topo, the octopus, and not a seahorse or dolphin. Topo is obviously his favorite, but he doesn't seem like a great vehicle. In the background, we see a boat is flipping and a man is falling out. Good heavens, the giant wave is taking the outrigger apart. Its skipper will drown unless I rescue him, Aquaman thinks. At this point, normally we see him thinking with bubbles because, you're underwater and you can't talk. And that is usually where we see it. He's not currently, and he could easily be narrating this or even talking to Topo, his friend or pet, depending on what day it is. Moments later, he's grabbed the drowning man and mid-rescue is explaining what he's doing, but the man initially protests. No, I don't want to be saved. Let go of me. Let me drown. When the gale dies down, they make their way to a strip of coral. The man is stumbling, and as he's walking, Aquaman diplomatically asks, "Can't you see where you're going?" Here's where we get my quote of the issue. Pretty early, too.
What's the matter, Aquaman?
I don't know. The fish are trying to tell me something.
The man answers, "No, you fool, I'm blind." Pause right there. In a more current comic, Aquaman would be profusely apologizing for his faux pas, but here he kind of looks past that fact to the meat of the problem. See, and he explains, "Many years ago, an accident took away my sight, so I retired to an isolated South Sea island, where for 12 years I dived for pearls, groping blindly on the ocean bottom for each oyster," he explained. "One day, after gathering enough pearls to pay for the operation that would restore my sight, a tragedy occurred. The chest containing my precious pearls fell overboard." In the flashback panel, we see a tackle box falling with a sad man looking down in that general direction. I can almost guarantee the tragedy was him bumping his elbow and knocking it over. I doubt it was a malicious dolphin or bird. Back to present time, all hope of regaining my eyesight vanished with the pearls. I have nothing to live for, so please don't stop me. Aquaman refuses the plan. "I must, because I can recover your pearls if you tell me where they sank." The man doesn't believe him, calling him a liar. "No human being can dive that deep. You want to trick me into giving you the location of the pearls so you can organize an expedition to retrieve them. But I'll never tell you." Shocked, Aquaman tries to reason with him, "But I'm Aquaman. I possess fantastic marine powers. I can command fish. The ocean is my home. It's nothing for me to dive for those pearls." Good summary, but point blank tells him he doesn't believe him. A man such as you describe couldn't exist in the past, present, or future. Aquaman's getting a little heated and invading his personal space a little by pointing at his chest really close. He tells the man that he's been out of touch with the world while on his island looking for pearls these 12 years. Otherwise, he'd know about Aquaman. He thinks for a moment and actually recalls having met him before. "Something about your face is very familiar. I've got it. I met you long ago when I was Aquaboy. You didn't believe in Aquaboy either, and your life was at stake then, as it is now." Now for Aquaman's turn to tell the story. This one many years ago before anyone had heard of Aquaman, not even Aquaboy yet. The man was a captain of a freighter that collided in the fog with another boat. He happened to be swimming by on his first Atlantic patrol when crash! A young Aquaboy thinks, "Great guns! I must see if the ships are badly damaged." Cut to the book and we see the Aquaman denier, but younger, having fallen, swirls around his head. Aquaman explains how he couldn't have seen the bridge of his boat. As you explain later, the impact of the collision had knocked you down, and I think maybe concussed him. The man's thinking, my head, I struck it against the wall. Everything's going round and round." While surveying the damage, he finds the other boat was just fine, but there's a huge hole in the man's ship. The ocean's pouring in by the ton. The boat will sink head first. Luckily, he saw 2 sperm whales in the distance. He'd never commanded them before, but he concentrated his thoughts on them, and seconds later they came through and raised the bow out of the water. He adds, "So that's how your freighter made it to port," which you'd think would raise questions, but we'll see. He goes on to think about how he'll explain how he saved the man and will make sure people will know about Aquaboy in times of need. Instead of thanking him, Captain Hart, which he just remembered what his name was, didn't believe him either. "You're a liar, boy. Whales didn't help me. The accident must have shifted the cargo to the stern, lifting the bow out of the water." At this moment, Hart began to recall the event. "Yes, now I remember. I saw no whales. I had many hallucinations because of my head injury. The boy in the fog had to be a hallucination too. No boy or man can rule sea creatures." Desperately, Aquaman replies, "But you're wrong." He points to himself. "That boy grew up to be me, Aquaman. Alone on an island for 12 years, you've been out of touch with the world. That's why you don't believe me." Unflinching. "Bunk. You're just kidding me." Aquaman sits down to think of how he can convince him while Hart is doing the pointing now. "You're just a thief after my pearls, but I'll take the secret of their location to my grave." Aquaman thinks about if he can't prove who he is, then he won't get the pearl location so that he can help him to give him the will to keep living. He goes on to think about how, as Aquaboy, he often found it hard to convince people that he had these powers, and that such a person could exist. One day, while swimming past a small Dutch fishing village, he noticed a hole in a small dike, or a wall built to prevent flooding. Water could pour through it, and the pressure could cause more of it to crumble. Thinking fast, he plugged a hole with his whole body. Thinking about how clever it is, likening it to a Dutch lad who had stuck his finger in the dike to prevent the sea from flooding in. He's thinking there's no way they'll think someone else helped them. After all, he's literally there, his body plugging the hole. As he's there, some men find the hole in the dike and call for people to get the tools and cement. Oddly, they don't acknowledge half the body sticking out of it. Aquaboy dislodged himself and the fisherman repaired the break. When he went to town, he's thinking, "Great, I'll be greeted as a hero," but instead, "Look, the spirit lad who saved us approaches. He's a ghost. Run, run!" He ineffectually replies, but I'm not a ghost, let me explain." But they're all running away, unwilling to listen to a ghost. As he's walking through the city, he realizes what happened. He finds a statue of the boy who'd put his finger in the hole, so he comes to the conclusion that people think that he's the spirit of that boy and that he'd come to save the town again. Despite this, they'd run away from their savior. Seeing it hopeless to convince them, he jumps into the water and leaves. Back to present, and Aquaman's thinking about how he is just as helpless today. He can't show a blind man his powers. He pleads with the man to believe him. Bah! What is seen in the water is often deceiving. The ocean is a mysterious world full of shapes and shadows. None of them is real. Their reaction jogs Aquaman's memory of another incident that happened when he was Aquaboy. There were archaeologists looking for a sunken Roman galley with treasure aboard that had gone down in an ancient battle. Oddly enough, the wreck was identified by its unique figurehead, a boy on a dolphin. Aquaboy decided to help since he knew where it was and he happened to be a boy with a dolphin friend. When they reached the real figurehead, it looked just like Aquaboy with the same color scheme of yellow gloves, orange top, and green pants. Behind some coral, Aquaboy figures they'll never believe him now. They'll think they saw the figurehead floating until it got lodged in the mud, since Aquaboy on the dolphin had been moving. At no point did he think to ride the dolphin and talk to them. He could easily show him how similar they looked to the boy. He's a real person, granted. They might think he's a ghost, and then it's just that Dutch story all over again. Benefit of a doubt, that's what he was thinking, but it was not explicitly told to us. It took me years till I convinced the seeing world that I existed, so how can I convince a blind man in a few hours? The ground starts to rumble. Grrrr. Crack! Hey! Hart says as he's being bounced off the ground. It's a sea quake that destroys the reef they'd been on. Aquaman's unable to help because I'm hurt. I can't move my arms, although I can stay afloat. But Hart will drown unless I get the sea creatures to help. That whale, which you hadn't seen until this very panel, gives me an idea. He sends a telepathic order, and the whale scoops up Hart into its mouth. Looking on, Aquaman thinks Hart's lucky that Grey King was nearby twice in his life when he needed it. He won't drown while he's in the whale's mouth. It's as safe as a watertight cabin. Then the whale goes underwater so he can go under Aquaman so he can transport the two men to land. Later near land, we see a smiling Hart lying down in the mouth of the whale, touching its teeth. I may not see it, but I can feel the whale's teeth. Aquaman, you must be the ruler of the sea if you can command this monster. Kinda rude, my boy just saved your life. Good news! Now tell me where the pearls are. A little aggressive, Aquaman. But he's had a rough day convincing Hart, so he's probably fed up. Days later, and Aquaman's recovered from his injuries, he goes to find the tackle box full of pearls. He's still thinking about how when he gives it to Hart, he'll surely believe him. Back at land, Aquaman is handing the pearls over to Hart. Hart apologizes. Forgive me, Aquaman, but now I don't need to see you to know you exist. And thank you. I can now order my eye operation. Sort of disregarding what he said, or acknowledging the apology, Aquaman says, "Yes, sir, Captain. I had a hard time convincing people I was Aquaboy, but I never dreamed it would happen again when I was Aquaman." The end. After the break, we'll go over some thoughts and feelings about the issue.
Wait a minute. That was no joke. Somebody tried to kill me. That or we're not paying Mr. Slippery enough. Holy Neptune's trident. This has to be the work of the Legion of Doom. Hey, there's an echo inside my head. Echo. Echo. Echo.
You okay, Aquaman?
Echo. Echo. What? Oh, no problem.
The story mostly takes place in the past, with Aquaman remembering times where he thought for sure he'd be able to convince people that he exists. Unfortunately for him, people are idiots and immediately went to ghosts. In fact, I could almost say this was, in a weird sense, like a clip show episode, but with clips that we had not seen before, which is actually kind of cool. This is the first story in a while where Aquaman didn't utilize his fish friends in a creative way. The most we have here is the whale holding Hart in its mouth. Given the limitation that Hart is blind, he can't hear. So what he could have done is get dolphins to make noises like a song. If he argues that you can just train a dolphin to sing, then he could potentially be said that the whale holding it in its mouth and taking it to shore is similar in that he could have just trained it to do that. If you're dead set against it like he was, it'd be impossible to persuade him. I think the biggest reason he believed was that the issue needed to end, so this was a good enough reason to convince him. I don't get why Hart was so against anyone getting his pearls. He was already about to get rid of himself, so why would it matter if someone else found the pearls? Plus, why would it matter if someone got an expedition together in order to find the pearls? The only reason I can see is that maybe the expedition would be really expensive, so it wouldn't make sense for someone to do it out of the goodness of their own heart. And the only reason someone would do it is because they think of it as like investing in something and they'll get it back once they themselves sell the pearls. Oh, and to the story where Aquaboy saved Hart years ago, how would Aquaman know of that story, including what he was calling himself at the time, if he was just a hallucination like Hart was saying? They just kind of dropped it, but it's like, nah, you're just trying to trick him. But why did I have the bowl part? Why did I have the bowl? What do you think? Did you read the comic? Did I get something wrong? If I did, and you guys let me know, I'll include a corrections section in the next episode and I'll credit the user. Let's continue the discussion on social media and the YouTube VOD. You can find me at ManjoumeThunder on Twitter or X, and at Team_Thunder on YouTube. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to and want to learn more about the Spider-Man of the future, check out Accelerated Visions, a Spider-Man 2099 podcast on Spotify and anywhere you can find podcasts. Be sure to follow that and this podcast to get episodes as soon as they drop. Manjoume out.
Whew, man. Glad that stopped before things got worse.